Welcome back to Fresh Outlook, everybody. Maybe President Obama is taking a cue from John Boehner because he started out this year crying a lot like the former Speaker of the House. He is choosing to champion gun control. He is redefining who is a gun dealer, and he's also promising more money for mental health. Once again, he's issuing orders, not passing laws. He is making executive orders that many people say are un-American. Let's say hello to our Fresh Outlook guests. I am joined by Jackie Guzda, Bill Rosenberg, and Mike Veny. And Mike, you are a speaker on mental health. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Mental health. I'm a person who lives with mental health challenges. Some people might label me as mentally ill. I've been in a mental hospital 3 times in my life.
Really?
Tried to take my own life at age 10. So I have a unique perspective in that I bring in what it's like to live with mental illness. And at the same time, I have a regular job and live a wonderful life.
And you would never know it from looking at you, so there go all the stereotypes out in the world.
You can't see it.
Exactly. Okay, we're also saying hello to Lance Simmens. He's the author of the book Fractured. And I'm going to actually start with you, Mike, because I thought the most interesting aspect of what President Obama wants to do is to put more money on mental health initiatives. Do you agree with the president's efforts? Tell me what you think.
I agree it's important to put money into mental health, but the whole mental illness and gun law stuff they're 2 separate issues. And a lot of times we associate someone commits a mass shooting with mental illness, but it's not always the case. Some people just decide to do evil things, and they can do that whether we have guns or not.
Right. I mean, I know, Bill, you take a little objection to what Mike says. That's been my point about all of this. Killing people is already against the law. Robbing them at gunpoint is already against the law. We don't need any more laws. The laws are there.
Well, I think you have to be careful how you discuss this, because if you go back to the Second Amendment, a lot of the conversation is all about where a comma is. It's not really about what the words say. I mean, none of the people that are really pushing gun control, anti-gun control, are really talking about militias, but that's what the Second Amendment talks about.
And that's open to debate. A lot of people feel that the right to bear arms has to do with militias, which are little military groups, not individual rights.
So if we get beyond that, okay, what we look at in 2016 is that mostly conservatives are kind of warming up to Obama's idea that let's spend a lot of this money on mental health. And Democrats and Republicans can both agree about spending money on mental health. And as a result, there's some connection there. The problem, though, is that people who are killed by guns are not just killed by crazy people, okay? Sometimes it's a young child that goes into the drawer and gets the gun out of the drawer. Sometimes people die. People don't realize this, but when someone dies, that gun doesn't disappear.
Right. Bill, I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes a kid takes a gun out of the drawer and shoots mommy and daddy, and it's horrible. You hear it all over the news. But that's not what our huge numbers of 30,000 people dead in the United States are. It's kids in Chicago, Detroit, New Orleans, killing people. That's what it is. And they're not kids, they're teenagers and young men.
A lot of those people that you're discussing didn't get guns legally.
Right.
Okay. And
so the laws are already there. We don't need new laws.
Well, no. The law is basically, first of all, I think in fairness, you have to recognize that President Obama is not making new laws. He's clarifying them through executive orders. He's not asking Congress to pass a new law or change things. He's clarifying who is a gun dealer. And what happens is when legislation gets passed, there's often these statements that don't have enough fill-in, in other words, defining them. And I think that's what's really going on.
Let's turn to Jackie. Jackie, I went to Chicago last weekend. When I went to my hotel, there was a picture of a gun with a slash through it. It was a no-gun zone. To me, that was an invitation for bad guys to come in there and commit crimes because they knew law-abiding folks like myself wouldn't be carrying. What say you?
No, not at all. That's a very flawed cause and effect relationship that you've got there. All right.
Help me then.
Okay, so look, you ascribe to this like the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. But if we don't look at that, hey, it's either or, let's play out your scenario. Everybody's packing, right? Bad guy comes in, everybody pulls out their guns, boom, 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 boom. The entire lobby drops dead. You know, that's the practicality of something like that. And how many times does a bad guy with a gun come into a public space like that? We mark them because it is so unusual. I think what we have to do is really look at the specifics, like the president is doing now. He's trying to close up this internet gun trafficking because anybody can get a gun on the internet. I mean, I live in the Bronx, and last night there was another shootout. A 19-year-old, the people that you were talking about before, these kids who come from rough neighborhoods where that's the culture.
Right.
No,
so
19-year-old.
It's not the guy in Arkansas who's buying a shotgun at Walmart necessarily who's going to cause problems.
But
it's these inner city kids.
But see, here's the thing.
That are getting the Saturday night specials and blowing people away.
It's all connected because down in Arkansas, that gun can be picked up by somebody who gets in their pickup and comes all the way up here and sells it in the neighborhood, in the Bronx.
Possible. Let's turn to...
what I'm saying is that we've really got to close up all these loopholes on how these guns get from state to state, who's selling them, etc. Yeah, I think we need new laws, more laws.
Okay, so the guys that don't follow laws can break those laws. Okay, let's turn to Lance Simmens. Lance, you're listening to the conversation. What say you, sir?
Look, the biggest problem that we've got here is access. And we have to limit access to these deadly weapons. We have to limit access to the kind of weapons that people can buy as well. But there is an absolutely indefensible opposition out there to even determining whether someone should or should not have access. So if we look at universal background checks, that should be a proposition that everybody agrees on. 90% of the people, 90% of the citizens of this country agree with some sort of background check. And the only thing that we're trying to say here, I think, which makes reasonable sense, is let us put some parameters around who can get what kind of weapons. And this is certainly something that the president has tried to take on this week with universal background checks. And it is certainly something which should be amenable to everyone. Just because a small proportion of people have this paranoia about they're coming for our guns, we should not let that stand in the way with a reasonable policy. And universal background checks is the best way that we can do that. I worked for the governor of Pennsylvania, former mayor of Philadelphia, Ed Rendell, for 8 years. And one of the first things he tried to do when we went to the state capitol, when he became governor, was to pass one purchase a month, one gun a month. We couldn't even get that bill talked about in the legislature. There is a paranoia here which we have to address.
It's a very divisive issue, no doubt. I'm going to turn back to mental health for a second with you, Mike. So your stance is, don't blame the mentally ill for this gun problem, this violence problem, this murder problem, because there are a lot of other factors behind it than just someone who might be depressed or might be, psychotic or whatever.
Absolutely. Like, one of the things that I've noticed is that we are a society that likes to top each other. And when Columbine happened, the thing that I worried about was someone was going to see that and say, I want to do that too. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do in our society with all different aspects of life, whether it be the arts, whether it be entertainment. We're always trying to top each other. Celebrities do it all the time. Right. And people see a mass shooting like that and say, well, I want to become famous.
But somebody who fixates on the Columbine shooters, aren't they on some level, quote unquote, crazy? Well, I mean, because, it's like when they talk about like recruiting members from ISIS because of Donald Trump's rhetoric. I'm not going to go get a gun and join ISIS because I hate Donald Trump.
Well, that's a great thing that you said, because people talk about that a lot. Is a terrorist a person who's living with mental illness? Is terrorism a mental health issue?
In a way, it seems like it.
It
so
seems
tied
like it
into
could
an
be,
ideology.
but I believe that you can be evil. You can do evil and also have mental health issues or not. They're two separate things. I could be stable up here, but I just decide that I don't like you.
Wouldn't part of the question be, though, if you know someone's not stable, would you want to allow them to have a gun?
Well, the question is, how do you define that? And that's where it gets very difficult.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's talk about the Newtown, Connecticut thing with the guy who shot up the school. His mother, Adam Lanza, had to know he was a disturbed young man. One, she was buying him weapons, taking him to the range, and the only blessing in all of this was that he blew her brains out too. What do you say, Jackie?
Well, he was a student at my school.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's the thing about that. he was going under so much medical care with his mental illness. His mother was really on top of that. She was going to move them from Connecticut out west somewhere because he could get better care, because nothing was going on. Now, her guns were legal, but he broke in and got her guns. Those guns were obtained legally. That's what I mean. If we cannot truly, and we cannot, draw a fine line. Somebody's sane, somebody's insane. There's no clear line there. It's very fuzzy. Right. But if people are undergoing things like mental health issues, etc., that's kind of a red flag. And maybe we should tighten up the laws that guns cannot be allowed in households where people are like that.
Now, I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. And I agree with you that there is a line that we have to find where someone should not be able to purchase a gun. But the reality is, if I am living a wonderful life and I just am a hobbyist, a gun buyer who likes to buy and trade guns, and I'm starting to experience depression, I might not want to get help for myself knowing that that's going to go on public record.
That's right.
And I might not be allowed to trade my guns anymore. And I don't think that's fair.
Well, you know what? We're going to have to sacrifice your not being allowed to trade your guns for a healthier society where first graders can go to school and be safe.
Let's get Lance in on this conversation. Lance, what say you about our discussion so far?
Let me tell you what I think the definition of mental instability and insanity is. You've got legislators across this country who are willing to put barriers to voting, to pass in legislative form, in policy form, barriers to voting. Yet those very same individuals are unwilling to entertain any barriers, any tests whatsoever for gun ownership. That is absurd and insane.
Okay. Interesting point. Lance Simmens, thanks for joining us. And Mike, I really think it's a fascinating conversation that we're having about evil versus mental illness and how the two may or may not be related. So we'd love to have you back in another time to talk about that as well. Bill, I'm going to let you have the closing word on this topic of gun control in America.
I think the reality is we have to face this struggle in society between issues of privacy and issues of security. Part of it is about guns, okay? Part of it is about ISIS. Part of it is about the internet. And basically people are very uncomfortable giving up their privacy, but in large part they've made a determination that security is more important. If you ask people what they value most, they value security more than privacy. But the people that are really pushing privacy are also the ones that are really going to push the right to have that gun and not to have to tell anybody about it and have free, unfettered access to it.
Also, a big part of the problem is it depends on where you live. If you live in New York City, I don't want everybody packing. But if I'm living in Vermont in a cabin, and it's going to take 15 minutes for the cops to get to my house, I want a shotgun. Mike, I'm actually going to give you the last word. What do you want the folks at home to know about this topic of guns and mental illness and the president's initiatives?
I think it's important to have both conversations and to keep talking about it. Again, there's no right or wrong, but we have to get really clear on where the line is, as you said before.
And if people got paid for having mentally ill people in their families, I'd be a rich man. So it goes around. I think everybody in my family is on Prozac, so you never know. Yeah. Anyway, when we come back, it's time for the lightning round where we talk about the week's interesting stories in lightning fast fashion. More on that after